Assalamu alaikum everyone, how are you guys doing? So in this video I want to tackle the question, can God be human? Essentially this video will be dealing with the concept of the incarnation, that God or Jesus is both fully divine, fully God, and fully not divine, fully human. And we will be tackling this question in a very interesting ways that I feel have not been dealt with in many YouTube videos dealing with the problem of the incarnation. In this video, we'll be seeing how the incarnation leads to many contradictions. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and let's begin. To start off, we're going to be looking at a number of arguments for the existence of God. This may seem weird. Why are we talking about proving God's existence in a video dealing with the incarnation? Just keep on watching, and once you get towards the end of the video, the last section of this video, much of this will make sense to you guys. So in the field of philosophy, academia, and even amongst YouTubers, there are many arguments for the existence of God. However, the top two arguments that have been pushed by Muslims and Christians alike are the contingency argument and the Kalam cosmological argument. No Christian or Muslim will disagree with these arguments. These are arguments that have been used for many years by Muslims and Christians alike. And in the field of academia, these are the top two arguments for the existence of God. So we'll be specifically looking at these two arguments. Let us start with the contingency argument. The contingency argument essentially states that everything in this universe is contingent. Contingent in the Arabic language, which will help understand what contingency means, is a mumkin, a possible thing. For instance, to know if something is contingent, a mumkin, a possible thing, you have to look at X, look at anything, and see, could it have been another way? By could it have been another way, there's no logical contradiction for it being another way. For example, my phone is black. It could, and there's no logical contradiction if my phone was blue or red or yellow. My phone is also a Samsung phone. There's no logical contradiction if my phone was an iPhone or a OnePlus phone or a Google Pixel. There's no logical contradiction. You can imagine me just bringing up my iPhone actually and just replacing it with my Samsung. Now, when it comes to contingent things in the universe, contingent things need an explanation for their existence. Why is that? Well, let's look at any contingent thing that we see. My phone, for example. There is a reason why my phone is black and not blue, or why I even have a phone. I can give you reasons for it existing the way that it is. Imagine walking into a room, there's four walls, there's nothing in the room except a banana. Now, looking at that banana, you'll be like, well, how did that banana come to that room? That question, just you thinking that question and trying to come up with ways and how that banana came into the room shows that the banana is contingent. There needs to be an explanation outside of the banana, outside of my phone, to explain why the banana exists in their room, or my phone is black or a Samsung, and so on and so forth. Now, with the contingency argument, all theists will argue, and even many atheists, but that's besides another video in and of itself, theists will argue there needs to be a necessary being, a being that could not fail to exist. That being that by necessity it must exist and does not depend on anything else for its existence. Because if everything here is contingent and could fail to exist, or could be another way, well, there needs to be an explanation as to why it is this way, or why we exist. And that is the necessary being. And theists will argue that this necessary being is God. Now, this is one of the greatest arguments for the existence of God. Now, if you're an atheist and you're trying to find issues with this argument, that's not the point of the video here. The point of the video is just presenting the argument that both Christians and Muslims use in the explanation for the existence of God. We humans are contingent. All the animals are contingent. So theists go, well, there needs to be an explanation for why we humans, animals, my phone, this camera, the laptop that you're watching this on, or the phone that you're watching it on, why do these things exist, and why do they exist in the way that they exist? And they will point to the necessary being, which will be a God, and then which will be the third stage, which will be either the Christian or Muslim God. So many arguments for the existence of God are done in three stages. 1, arguing for, let's say, necessary being. 2, arguing that that necessary being is a God. 3, pointing out why that God is the God of, let's say, Christianity or Islam. That's going to come important towards the end of the video. So I hope everyone understood the necessary being argument. Now let's switch to the Kalam cosmological argument. The Kalam cosmological argument is essentially this. Everything that began to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the conclusion, the universe has a cause. And this argument is popularized by William Lane Craig, but it was actually created by Imam al-Ghazali. And you can even see like Aquinas, his first ways, that there must be a first cause of the universe. It has the same concept, that essentially there needs to be a cause, something that caused the universe, or something that caused the beginning of everything. And many times, theists will argue there can never be an infinite set of things that were caused going backwards. Because imagine, for instance, and this is a famous example given by Hamza's Den, there's a sniper, he wants to shoot a shot. The sniper aims his gun ready, but he has to ask permission from his boss. The boss tells the person, well, I have to ask permission from my boss. Then that boss tells the first boss, well, I have to ask permission from my boss. If this set goes infinitely back, then the shooter will never be able to shoot his shot. There needs to be a final boss, like not in a video game, like an actual final boss in this example that says, yes, I grant you permission to shoot the shot. Then it goes all the way down back to the sniper and he can finally take a shot. That's essentially what theists argue in the Kalam cosmological argument, that there needs to be a first cause of the universe, something that caused everything else to exist. This thing did not begin to exist. God was always around. Because if God began to exist, well, there needs to be an explanation for God's existence, and we're just in the same problem of infinite regress. God is that one thing that never began to exist. He was always existing. And he is the first cause of the universe, the thing that caused everything else to occur. Once again, the first part of the argument from theists is that there needs to be a first cause. The second part is that that cause is God. The third part is that that God is Jesus, the triune God, or Allah, for instance. Now, these are the top 2 arguments, or at least one of the top 3 or 4 arguments for the existence of God in academia amongst Christians, Muslims, YouTubers, apologists alike. Almost everyone unanimously agrees that these are very strong arguments for the existence of God, and most likely you have come across these types of arguments on YouTube or reading a paper in class. I just wanted to lay down these 2 arguments, as this will be important for the third portion of this video. But now we're moving on to the second portion of this video, which is the concept of the Incarnation, the concept of Jesus being God. Now, what is the Incarnation in Christian theology? Well, rather than me, butchering this, or some people saying, oh, you're strawmanning us, I'll be reading the Chalcedonian Creed itself and seeing what they say for this concept of the Incarnation. So this is not a butchering or a strawman. This is, strictly speaking, exactly what Christian scholars of the past have stated for the concept of incarnation. So I will begin reading. We then, following the Holy Fathers, all with one consent, teach men to confess one and the same Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, the same perfect in Godhead, and also perfect in manhood, truly God and truly man, of a rational soul and body, consubstantial with the Father according to the Godhead, and consubstantial with us according to the manhood. In all things like unto us, without sin, begotten before all age of the Father according to the Godhead, and the later days for us and for our salvation, born of the Virgin Mary, the Mother of God, according to the manhood. One and the same Christ, Son, Lord, only begotten, to be acknowledged in 2 natures, inconfusedly, unchangeably, indivisibly, inseparably. The distinction of natures being by no means taken away by the union, but rather the properties of each nation being preserved, and concurring in one person and one subsistence. Not parted or divided into 2 persons, but one and the same Son and only begotten God. So there are a couple of things to note here. For starters, as it clearly states, the same perfect in Godhead and also perfect in manhood. So God, Jesus, is perfectly God, perfectly divine, and perfectly man, except that he does not sin. The other important element is this: consubstantial with the Father according to the Godhead, and consubstantial with us according to the manhood. Essentially, Jesus is consubstantial with the Father, meaning he is of the same essence as the Father. He is the Father in that sense, while also being with the same essence in manhood. This may sound confusing, but essentially what it's saying is that Jesus has two natures. He's fully God and fully human. But Jesus shares in the same essence as God, meaning that he is fully God and he shares in the same essence as manhood, as the essence of man. Better understand this, imagine putting a piece of iron in fire. Iron has its own essence, different from the fire. Iron and the fire are two distinct things. However, over time, when you leave the iron into the iron becomes hot, it becomes red. In that sense, the iron, it has the essence of the fire and the essence of the iron, yet it is distinct from the fire. While this analogy is not 100% perfect, I mean, no analogy is perfect, but that's besides the point. You kind of get this idea that the iron has a different essence. It is not fire. Fire has a different essence from the iron. Same way, a human has a different essence from God. God and human are different things. They are not the same thing. However, Jesus is both God and he is also human. He shares in the essence of God, the same essence of God, and the same essence of man, yet they have two different natures. So I hope everyone understands this, because now we'll be moving on to the third and final part of this video. Now, what do these two sections, the first section discussing the arguments for the existence of God, have to do with the second section discussing the incarnation? What is even this third section of the video going to be about? Well, in this third section, I will be showing you the problem of the incarnation. And essentially, the problem of the incarnation is this: any argument for the existence of God can never lead to the Christian idea of God insofar as it relates to the concept of the incarnation. Meaning, no Christian can go to the third stage and argue for their specific understanding of God. They can only go to the second stage. The second stage being that there is a God. However, once they try to argue for their conception of God, all of the arguments for the existence of God, especially these two main arguments, will lead many contradictions within the belief of the Christian God, meaning that Christians can never go to the third and final stage and prove that their gods exist. Put another way, if any Christian uses these arguments to argue for God, they can only go insofar as arguing that a God exists, but as soon as they try arguing for their conception of God, especially insofar as it relates to the incarnation, then it simply falls apart. They can't do the third stage. They fall apart because it will lead to many contradictions based on the first two parts of their own argument, arguing for the existence of God. Let us look at each of the arguments in order to unpack the problems with the incarnation, how this completely affects and breaks down Christians arguing for their specific understanding of God. Let's look at the contingency argument. Once again, everything in this universe is contingent. Prior, I mentioned us humans, animals, we are all contingent, and really nobody denies that. There needs to be a necessary being. Obviously, Christians, Muslims alike will argue that the necessary being is God. However, here's where the problem lies. If humans are contingent, and God is necessary, then it is impossible, it is a logical contradiction for the Son, Jesus, to be fully God and fully human. Why? Because you're saying that Jesus is fully necessary and fully contingent. That makes no sense. That is a logical contradiction. That is the equivalent of saying that I saw a four-sided triangle. A triangle is three sides and not four sides. But to say that I saw a four-sided triangle means you saw something that is fully three-sided and fully four-sided. It simply leads to a contradiction. If we were to say, based on the Chalcedonians themselves, that Jesus is fully God and fully human, shares in the same natures of each, that means that Jesus is both necessary and contingent at the same time. It is the equivalent, once again, of stating that there is a number that is both even and odd. It cannot exist. A number is either even or odd, but it cannot be both. So just looking at the necessary being argument, the contingency argument, we see this falls apart. It cannot be both necessary and contingent at the same time. That is a clear-cut contradiction. Well, what about the Kalam cosmological argument or the first cause argument? Does that weigh any better? Well, to be honest, not really. That still falls into the same issues of falling into contradictions. Once again, anything that began to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause, meaning that anything that began to exist at a certain point in time has a cause for its existence. Put another way, everything there needs to be a first cause to the universe, a first cause to everything. Why is this a problem for the concept of incarnation? Well, let's go back to the Chalcedonian Creed itself. Specifically, look what it says here. Begotten before all ages of the Father, according to the Godhead. Even if we look at the Nicene Creed, we see the same phrasing, that the Son is begotten, meaning he was brought into existence. Look what the Nicene Creed says itself. We believe in one Lord, Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, begotten of the Father before all worlds. God, Jesus, was begotten by the Father. He became into existence. Look at the Kalam cosmological argument once again. Anything that began to exist has a cause. Jesus began to exist. He was begotten from the Father, meaning Jesus has a cause. Now, what is the issue here? Once again, if Jesus is both fully divine and fully human, that means that at the same time, he is caused but not caused. That's a contradiction, a clear-cut contradiction. He is the equivalent of, once again, saying that this number is both even and odd. That makes no sense. A rebuttal that a Christian might throw is this concept of as stated in the Chalcedonian Creed, that Jesus shares in the essence of God and in the essence of human only in his human form. Meaning that only in the divine essence of God is God divine, but in the human essence of God, God is human. So there are two essences that he's connected with, different natures, but because he is connected through the same essence of God and in a different realm has the same essence of humans, there's no contradictions. It's there. The Christian will simply state that he is fully divine in the divine essence that he shares with God. And yes, he is fully human only in the human essence that he shares with humans. Those are two separate things that we'll be arguing. However, this still fails to deal with the conclusion. To better understand why this rebuttal falls apart, let us look at an analogy. For starters, once again, many Christians will argue that Jesus is both divine, fully divine in his divine sense only, and fully human only in his human sense. So they're trying to say there's no contradiction here. However, there's no analogy that actually properly explains this or fits with what is the argument being made through the incarnation. Let us look at even or odd numbers. You're either even or you're an odd number, but you cannot be both. Now, let us look at the number 3. 3 is an odd number, so it shares in all of the essence of what it means to be an odd number. 3 is also a number, so it shares in the essence of being a number, but it is not fully number. Numbers encapsulate both even and odd within it. So 3 is only connected to the essence of numberhood insofar as it, once again, is an odd number, but it's not shared in the essence of the entirety of numberhood. 3 is never an even number. To properly posit an analogy that would connect with the idea of the incarnation, Jesus being fully God and fully human, you would have to provide an analogy of a number that is both even and odd at the same time. Strictly speaking, an impossible endeavor. It is a contradiction. And that is why there's no analogy that can save the Christian belief of the incarnation and that will deal with the argument presented in this video. And prior to wrapping up this video, I wanted to say that this entire argument for the problem of the incarnation, the problem of God being a necessary being, the first cause, and then Jesus being a contingent human, and the problem that arises in trying to connect Jesus and say he is God, is summarized beautifully in the Quran. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, مَا الْمَسِيحُ بَنُو مَرْيَمَ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ وَأُمُّهُ صِدِّيقَةٌ كَانَ يَأْكُلَانِ الطَّعَامَ انظر كيف نبين لهم الآيات ثم انظر أنا يؤفكون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, the Messiah, son of Mary, was no more than a messenger. Many messengers had come and gone before him. His mother was a woman of truth. They both ate food. See how we make the signs clear to them, yet see how they are deluded from the truth. In just this one ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it clear the clear contradiction with Jesus being God. It first starts, the Messiah, son of Mary. How is it that God is caused by Mary? God is the first cause. God is not caused. Yet it says right here, the Messiah, son of Mary, caused by Mary, created, born out of Mary. But God is not caused. There is a contradiction right there. Then it further states, كَانَ يَأْكُلَانِ طَعَامٍ. They used to eat food. Why would God, a necessary being, do something that a human, a contingent being would do? Why is God, Jesus, based on the Christian doctrine, in need of food? Why is he in need of eating and maybe having to go to the bathroom once he's done eating? All of these elements of Mary giving birth to Jesus and Jesus eating is the Quranic explanation for the problem, this idea of the incarnation, that Jesus is God. Based on the Christian doctrine, God is, not only is he the first cause, but he is caused by Mary at the same time, a contradiction. Not only is he a necessary being, but he's contingent because he needs to eat food. So he is both necessary and contingent, a necessary being. This entire argument is beautifully summarized in the Quran, and I took this argument from the Quran, as all arguments are from the Quran are the best kinds of arguments. So to conclude this video, the concept of incarnation simply leads to contradictions, and no Christian who believes in the incarnation can actually argue for the existence of their own God based on the arguments that they set up previously for the existence of a God. The problem here lies this: the Christians who believe in the incarnation are in a catch-22. They either accept that it's a mystery that logic can never comprehend it, or if they want to be logically consistent, then they need to find another concept of God that does not fall into these contradictions. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you guys next time, and Assalamu alaikum.